Susan, and this is
Eliya, and welcome to Seed Scholars Gather and Grow Summer Series, where we're going to explore our senses out in our natural environment.
Exactly. So we're going to be exploring our sense of sound, our sense of smell, and our sense of sight.
And our sense of touch, our sense of taste, and beyond. So stay tuned for some videos and activities that go with those senses.
Can't wait. Welcome to our sense of sight that we'll be exploring in the videos here today. Our sense of sight is so important for taking in cues from our surroundings, thinking about an inviting landscape or a landscape that doesn't look so inviting where we don't want to go, thinking about what we see around us that can invite us to taste something. If we can identify plants, if we can identify creatures in our environment, we're using our eyes so often when we're out in nature. We can also tell a lot from the creatures around us by where their eyes are located. For example, predators would tend to have their eyes right at the front, and prey tend to have their eyes further out so that they can have a better peripheral vision for what's coming and have that awareness. Owls have fascinating eyesight with tube-shaped eyes, so they can see really, really deep, really far. They can see up to 2 kilometers away very impressively. So sight is a big part of our lives in nature and for the creatures around us and how we're interacting all together. Let's find out some things we can do with our sense of sight. Here we are at the beautiful willow, and we will be using its twigs from its branches to help us create charcoal at the fire. And willow is a very resilient plant. You can notice it by its catkins in early spring, and in summer its leaves are all out of its buds. They're kind of mouth-shaped. That's something that can help you identify it. It also usually tends to have many trunks coming out from the center. So those are some identification tips for willow, and it's very handy for many purposes, but right now we'll be using it to make charcoal. Here we are by the fire, and we've prepared everything to make charcoal with the willow that was harvested. So we got our willow branch, our piece. You can use secateurs or loppers, making sure to collect it safely with whatever tool you're using, and making sure also that there's enough willow to go around. And after that, you can scrape off the bark with your fingers. Here's some willow bark that we can use for weaving or for dyes at a later stage, thinking about using all of the pieces of the plant that we can. You could also have peeled it with a peeler or perhaps with a safe other tool, just making sure you know how to manage it properly or with an adult. And we finally got our little pieces of willow from the branches, and we took them out and we added them inside of our charcoal box, our peeled small pieces, making sure they're the right size for our tin. And after a couple minutes, the smoke started to come through, and once the smoke finishes, we know that our pieces have turned to charcoal in the absence of oxygen inside of this tin with a few holes on top. And that's the stage it's at now, so it's ready to be taken off so we can create some ink. I've brought over the finished charcoal to this station right here. You can see what used to be larger willow rods, which were about the thickness of a pencil. They've burned down into charcoal right here. and I'm going to use about the equivalent of 2 tablespoons, about an ounce of charcoal to bash it up to make it a bit more ashy. You could have done that in the fire as well. And I'm going to add a couple of tablespoons of distilled water too, and just a drop of gum arabic, which I bought in an art store, but you can use white vinegar, just a drop to help with the binding. And then I will stir it all together, shake it up, and we can use some charcoal ink for our visual delights. In this video, we are going to be exploring our sense of sight by creating an earth mobile. So, for this, you will need 3 sticks, or we're going to call them rods. You'll need some cords, which we're just going to use some string, and you'll need some interesting objects, which I have here in the basket. Now, the aim of making a mobile like this is so that each of the objects are balancing each other out. And at the end, we'll create a mobile that we can hang up and enjoy. So why don't you give it a go and see how you get on making your own earth mobile. As you can see, I have attached a piece of string to the center of my smallest stick. To one side, this then connects to one side of my next largest stick, and finally to the other side of the largest stick that I have, and one at the top that we're going to hang from the tree. Now it's time to go and see if we can find some materials that will balance out our mobile.
So this is our final earth art mobile, and as you can see, the 3 rods are somewhat horizontal, which took a lot of patience and trial and error. You can see that we've also added some interesting objects, some lovely sticks that we found, a rock, and at the bottom a lovely acorn, a pine cone I should say, and some elder leaves from our elder tree. Thank you so much for joining us for Gather and Grow Summer Series. We had a sensational time and we hope you did too. See you next time. Slán!